Liz Bowen with NC State University, and Dee Dee DeLongpray Johnston with Wake Forest University. So what we're going to do first is kind of go around the room and understand who's in the room, where you're from, and what you're interested in learning from this panel specifically. And then each of our panelists will give an overview, kind of what they're doing, their scope at their universities, some of the initiatives that they've got going on. And then we'll move into more of a discussion, question and answer, some of the key themes, the consistencies or differences between the two, how those can manifest in different universities, your different contexts, things like that. So let's start over on this side, sorry, and we'll start there and we'll move around the room. So just tell us, who you're with, your name, who you're with, and what you'd like to do.
I'm Megan Beach with AGC Glass. I'm a lead AP in CSI CDT, and we are glass manufacturers, and here to hear what the industry is trying to towards.
Colin Winker, affiliated engineers, mechanical engineer, curious to find out how we're balancing modeling versus actual energy data.
Kay Jackson with Interface Carpet. Interested just to hear what you're doing on your campuses and how Florida can contribute to those initiatives.
Shane Strickland, on-site water management. We normally do water as an asset. We want to do as much as possible on-site. I'm just curious what you guys are doing compared to what we've been doing with our clients.
Rachel Cotter with on-site water management as well.
I'm Lyra Rackson with the North Carolina Solar Center. I do training programs.
I'm Dan Schnitzer with the Chapel Hill Park Road City School District, and just interested to hear, similarly, we've got lots of buildings, old buildings, new buildings, and we have lots of people in those buildings. So how you guys manage to deal with all that?
I'm Renee Hutchison. I'm an architect with the State Energy Office Utility Savings Initiative program that is mission is to help implement the state energy management plan. So it's helping all public buildings manage and reduce their energy use. And we're also, like Liz was saying, or Tracy was saying, looking at how buildings are actually performing against what they were projected to do. So that's the way to say it.
I'm Eleanor Angel. I'm an architect with SFLA Architects. We build green schools and buildings and universities.
Jason Letty, architect with Klein Design Associates, and we're doing some work with NC State, and also just have a strong interest in university housing. What's going on with that and advancements there.
I'm Joel Dabrowski with BBH Design. We do obviously higher ed, and we do healthcare work, but in terms of this seminar, probably interested in a more campus-wide perspective, because we do a lot of individual buildings. We kind of wonder if that fits in the big piece of the pie, and also a little bit about I guess how things have changed in the last few years. If there's any difference in how we're approaching for university work, what you're looking for out of these things when we do art and design.
Greg Flynn. I'm an architect. Have a long history with green building from even before LEED. Most recently, I was reviewing school plans for the Department of Public Instruction. So, seen a lot of education projects, and now I'm doing my own thing.
I'm Matt Baker. I'm the senior environmental science at NC State. So I've worked with Liz a little bit. I just want to know a little bit more about what other universities are doing.
I'm Donna Justice with Commissioning Works, and we've done quite a lot of work with Elon University. Done about 20 buildings there and know their campus and how it works. Curious how Wake Forest and UNC also, or no, NC State, I'm sorry, works with theirs.
My name's Ann Goodson. I'm with J. Dunn Construction, commercial contractor, and I also chair the Charlotte Green Schools group. And so I guess I'm just interested in learning how you guys balance LEED versus sustainability versus student learning.
My name is Gina Robinson. I'm an architecture and urban design project manager at a multidisciplinary firm in Suzhou, China. And I'm interested in transitioning back to the U.S., and I just kind of want to get an idea of what's
Kevin Montgomery. I'm an architect with O'Brien Atkins. We've done work at NC State and other university levels. So I just want to understand in the private and both public university sector what sustainability means, especially in the public sector where LEED is not achievable or not a mandate as it may be in the private sector.
Sam Carrera with CB&I. I'm a PE and lead AP. I do energy efficiency and sustainability. And working with some past universities, trying to see what other universities are doing in regards to sustainability.
I'm Joy Allen. I'm the marketing manager for USGBC North Carolina chapter. And I'm hoping I might learn something today that will inform how we might better engage with campuses.
My name is Laura Loffer. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at Central Carolina Community College in Pittsburgh. We just achieved LEED Silver in our classroom building and LEED Gold for our library. And I'm really interested in the behavior part and the education part, how we can get sustainability beyond our curriculum program into other curriculum programs and staff and faculty behavior.
Thank you. Did we miss anybody? Okay, great. So with that then, we're going to have each of our panelists kind of talk about, there's a number of points and a lot of variety in what you all are interested in. We kind of go through what they're doing on their different campuses, some of their major initiatives, maybe some of the challenges for, 15 or 20 minutes each. If you'd like to do that. Or 10. And then, or 5. And then we can have more of a discussion of question and answers. So whoever wants to go first.
Go first. Yeah, I think you're going to be far more interested in what Liz has to say because she has a more relevant background in this. Again, my name is Dee Dee. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Wake Forest University. We are a private, liberal arts-based university with a research agenda. So we're a little bit of a hybrid. We're not the big Research One university, but we do have a very strong research agenda. We were founded here in Wake Forest, not very far away. In 1956, moved to the town of Winston-Salem. That's a whole other very interesting story that I can tell you all about the Reynolds family. But as a result, we have a lot of building stock from that age, an age when there was no such thing as energy efficiency or no attention paid to it, or airflow or natural light or water or any of the things that y'all are talking about over the next couple of days that you're here together. So we have that combination, as somebody else talked about, of aging building stock that is, of course, full of people, and new building stock that performs a lot differently. So I always wonder when parents come on move-in day and one of the kids in the group gets to go to the fancy new LEED Gold residence hall, and the other one has to go to the original 1956 dungeon, how they might feel about that. And they're surprisingly happy about whatever the experience is, and I think they find a fun way of spinning it to say, oh, well, everybody has to, go through the same thing together, and it's part of, you're here for an education, not to live in a palace. So they're surprisingly good-natured about it. We are interesting also in that we are sort of a suburban campus, and we're not really, surrounded by buildings and roads, but we're also not really in the country, and so issues like transportation are really challenging for us because we abut on one side a very tony, well-to-do neighborhood, and on the other side, an area of town that really sorely needs some redevelopment and economic infusion. And on the other sides, we have kind of other challenging aspects. So the campus itself is kind of anomalous in almost every way. I myself came from the University of Florida, so coming from one of those large public land-grant universities with 60,000 students to a small private university with 6,000 students was a tremendous leap. I would love to kind of address some of the questions that you all had, or some of the learning outcomes you had for the session around behavior, around how we create a culture of sustainability. I do not have an environmental science background. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect. I'm not LEED accredited. I have none of the things that you all are. I have an undergraduate degree in business and an MBA in sustainability. So what I bring to the table is much more of an organizational behavior approach to culture change, and looking at our university as a microcosm and how we're training our students and the folks on our campus our small community, can they see what that looks like in the world? Because unfortunately, sustainability, and I won't go off on a tangent, though I could, on this particular topic, it has been reduced to this very mechanical definition of a three-legged stool, which is not helpful. It's a definition that derives from international development. We are not doing international development on our campuses. So we need to expand the conversation. We need to create narratives that help people understand that what we're talking about is life. And then it gets sort of reduced down, but who's ever participated in a strategic planning process? Yeah, have you led a strategic planning process? So I've led quite a few of them, and I will tell you it's very easy for people to think in terms of tactics that are within their scope of control. It is very difficult for people to think about strategies, and it's even more difficult for people to think about sort of the big picture. And so when we get into something like LEAD, the tendency is to go to a checklist. And that's something that I can understand. I can go through the list. I can check off the boxes. I get it. But even within a university context, well, is it more important to have a bike rack? Or is it more important to maximize your energy efficiency points? You have to understand something about the larger system in order to make those decisions about how you're allocating. And so while I love LEAD because it's really pushed the envelope, I also don't like LEAD because it allows some people to just slip under sort of the radar of checking off boxes. So on our campus, we have kind of an internal policy, if you will. We're not a very policy-driven campus, which is a nice, refreshing change for me, coming from a legislature-driven organization. But we do have an internal commitment to design our buildings to a minimum of LEED Silver. What we have in our strategic plan, however, are objectives that say we will maximize energy efficiency, we will maximize water efficiency, because those are the most important things to us. And if we do all of the other things in addition, that's terrific. And so since we put that internal commitment in place, all of our buildings have achieved LEED Gold. And so it just lets you know that when you focus on the things that are really important for life writ large, you end up doing the right thing for the systems that are in place to kind of manage those metrics. And Liz will talk a lot more about dealing with existing building stock. That's a big challenge for us. We're not engaged in LEED for existing buildings right now. Frankly, we're facing some decisions about whether or not to tear down some original buildings and rebuild them rather than trying to restore them. And we're really trying to calculate what we would lose from a historic preservation perspective, what we would lose in the embodied energy of what's already in those buildings and everything that went into building them in 1956 versus the health and well-being of the occupants. And it will be very costly for us if we decide to renovate those existing buildings to the highest capacity that they could perform for the health and well-being of occupants, which we're a university. We exist not to build buildings, we exist to educate students. And while our students are being educated, they need to be in a healthy and well environment. So those are some really big challenges for us. And I think I'll stop there. I can talk more about kind of the engagement component of what we do and kind of question and answer. I don't think as many of you are interested in that, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but we can talk about the engagement networks that we have established, how we do that education, how we empower people. I am in office of 2 people, and that is plenty. I have a $30,000 budget, and that is plenty. Our objective is to get everybody else to do the work. Our objective is to get everybody else to spend their existing budgets differently, not to do it for them, and not to spend money for them, because it's not about me doing it, it's about everybody on my campus doing it. So I'm happy to talk more about how we do that.
Thank you, Dee Dee. And thank you all for coming to this session. I'm really excited to talk with you all, and I don't really know how much we're going to be able to cover in this. There's so many things to talk about. So we have a lot at NC State. I'm Liz Bowen. I'm at NC State University. I'm a program coordinator at NC State. I work for the director, Tracy Dixon. We are moving into this will be 6 years as an office in January. This is, we've now moved into a phase where we're doing more peer-to-peer education and the behavior behavior change that she's been talking about, I've been jotting down a lot of notes, thinking about comparisons and contrasting that we can do. So we have about 35,000 students on campus. We've got a mini city. We're a research university focused in technology and engineering, but we have also have liberal arts on campus as well. So my focus areas are green buildings, smart grid, and renewable energy on campus. And so there's a lot of overlap in these, and sometimes and other times less overlap. So the areas that I wanted to talk with you about, specifically about what I do, include LEED and green buildings, new construction, retrofits, and evaluating LEED for existing buildings, and then also behavior change, if you're interested in that. So, and measurement and verification, right? Big hot topic as well. So that's just kind of an overview of the things that I'm excited to talk to this group about, and that I think that will resonate with you all. So we've made a lot of progress over time, and this year we have 20 NC State stewards. So these are students that are working with our office as liaisons between the Sustainability Office and the larger campus community. We also have an eco-village for the very first time, which is a living and learning village where there are approximately 60 students living in the north wing of Burgaw Hall, and they're self-selecting into this group, and they're trying to understand what that means and what they want to do. And this is the first year. This is the first semester of the Eco Village. We also have a wellness village. It's the first semester of the wellness village, and there's 7 dimensions of wellness, and one of the dimensions of wellness is sustainability and the relationship to the natural world. And so we've been working really closely with that village as well, that living and learning village as well. So you can see, we're getting more and more outreach to students over time, and they're doing more peer-to-peer education. As far as our existing buildings, we have in our database, in our architecture and engineering database, we have over 750 buildings. That includes chicken coops, so that includes many non-building square footage. But we, this is our a representation of our building stock. Some of these are only one of them is on the historic register, so most of them are not on the historic register, but they have historic character that is important to us as well. So we've got about a dozen projects certified or registered for LEED for new construction. So under LEED 2.0 or LEED 3.0, and we've had all kinds of fun challenges with that. Because the checklist, as Dee was talking about, it's more like it's a checklist, and we're a campus, and we've got all kinds of campus policies. That's a contrast with Wake Forest, and just systems that work for our campus that don't always work well with the credits as outlined in the reference guide. So let's get into something juicy. So we're looking at and evaluating LEED for existing buildings for a class at the College of Design. And actually, Tracy Ryder here would be principal instructor for that class. And so I, on the facility side, we're making faces over there. I've been talking, in facilities, I have access to, all the groups that make things happen on campus, like the university architect, repair and renovation, design and construction services, capital project management, the budget offices, and all these groups. So what we're doing is we're finding out if we can satisfy the budget for this type of class. We think that we have a lot of student interest in it, and the great thing about it is that students would be able to take this class and then sit for the LEED AP exam, which is not accessible for students, quite frankly, and really helps them as they're entering the working world. So we're looking at that. Feel free to ask questions about that as well. I wanted to tell a fun little story, and then we'll go into the question period. This past May, we planted our first on-campus garden, and we now have food that's serving our dining halls that was grown on campus. And so I just want to give a flavor of, I have a very thin slice. We've got 4.5 FTE in this sustainability office, full-time equivalent, and all these students. And so there's a lot of initiatives happening, and I represent one small slice. So there's a lot of different things going on. So measurement verification, feel free to ask me a question about it, but I'm going to take a pause.
So with those two introductions, I have any questions? I'll go to Lyra.
And you would think I know this because I work for assistant too, but the Eco Village and the Wellness Villages, were they student-led initiatives, or that was something that you had to prod the students? Like, no, we're really cool to have an Eco Village. I mean, how did that come about?
Student interest was a big factor, but housing was the one who established the villages. And housing is a receipts-based organization, like a business that works on our campus.
So was there an initiative with working with you, or that was just like really cool to have an Eco Village and I think a lot more students charge extra for it?
As a general theme, I would say that there's a lot of sustainability initiatives that we no longer are initiating, and that there's a lot of organizational support across campus. So we do work with housing on the Eco Village, and we do find projects for those students to do, and we have a tie to the village, but it was a housing initiative.
How many students did you say were in each village?
Let's see. Okay. I think it's about 60 per each, but I can get you the official numbers.
That was me, I guess, too.
Yes.
One of the things you mentioned that really resonated was, we're in the business of educating students in the types of practice that we're doing, and everything else is just the methods in which we do that. If I can extract that a little further. So you asked an important question: what's more important, bike rack or a large-scale energy plan? I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what your thought process is on that and how you come to those, because I think it's a very important question. A lot of the energy planning stuff happens in an office somewhere, but yeah, there has to be human behavior behind that. But the bike rack is something that instills values in students that can affect lifelong change. So how do you balance this?
Yeah, I think it's both and. So what I tend to do is to look at it from an engineering process perspective. So if the university is the process, what goes into the system and what comes out of the system, and what are the waste streams and how can we close those waste streams. So if there are dollars and people and all these resources going in, including energy and food and material supplies, how efficiently are we using them to create education, athletic wins, research, etc. And when I'm looking at those, I'm looking at what does it mean for a student to be educated as a global citizen. And so that student needs to understand something about transportation and needs to have had the ability to try something different out. But weighing that against wasted energy in terms of atmospheric pollution, wasted water in terms of just inefficient systems. So there's planetary constraints, and so it's kind of balancing those things that are really important for the continuation of life with those things that are important for our definition of an educated student, an educated potential global citizen. And so there's that balance, right, which is really difficult. And so what's your common denominator, for measuring those things? And you actually have those intellectual conversations, which I think are helpful, and I think it's helpful to have faculty involved in those, and it's helpful for students to be involved in those. The other balancing we do, frankly, though, is balancing those things that are truly impactful, a really super efficient HVAC system, with those things that are sexy and appealing, a bike rack, a bike sharing program. Because from just a psychological perspective, I need people to be engaged in something that they do have some connection to. At the same time, we're doing this thing that is very difficult to educate them on, much less get them even basically interested in it. So it is a balance between impactful, sexy, interesting, gets my attention, makes me want to learn a little bit more about sustainability. So ultimately, I might want to get a graduate degree and learn more about an HVAC system. So it's several different balancing acts as we're moving forward. Transportation on our campus I will just tell you, you can walk from the furthest place to the furthest place in 5 minutes. So we don't really have very many students who bike. So I get like a student a week saying, hey, can we have a bike sharing program? I've actually done 3 different demand surveys. So our job is to identify problems and create solutions for them, not to pluck some sexy, fun solution out of the sky and apply it to a problem that doesn't exist. And that's frustrating for students. So this is the 3rd demand survey. We actually had over a 2,000 person on a 6,000 per student campus. We had a 2,000 person response rate to this transportation study that we just completed. And we have a 14% demand rate for bike sharing. I'm not going to invest in a big fancy bike sharing program because that doesn't make sense. It's not a good use of students' tuition dollars or donor dollars or anything else. What I'll probably do is throw 6 bikes out on the patio and have them checked out from the student center to get everybody off my back. You know what I mean? So, yeah, we have a bike sharing program. It's not what you see in Amsterdam. It's not what you see in Paris. It's not what you see in New York. We don't need that. So it's also, that's part of the educational process, is educating students, and that's what we do in our applied sustainability classes, is how do you identify a problem? How do you work with a client to identify a problem? What's that analysis process so that you can create a solution and manage that project? And that's because for some of them, sustainability is kind of a new concept. They do go to whatever the fun, sexy solutions are that they see out there. So long, rambling answer, lots of different things to balance, but I always have to come back to the fact that we are an educational institution. So everything we do should tie back to education in some way.
Laura, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, many questions. So right now we're trying to assess sustainability in classes outside of the sustainability curriculum. So I wonder if y'all see growth in that on your campus, and have you assessed that, and if so, what tools you use?
I can take a first stab at it. One thing that is a new development again for this semester is the addition of a sustainability director for the Poole College of Management. So they have a sustainability initiatives director, which is on the academic side. We're on the facility side. So their job is integrating sustainability throughout the curriculum at the Poole College of Management. So there's a piece.
We're both of our institutions are members of ASHE, which is the umbrella organization for sustainability in higher education. It's the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. We're both participants in STARS, Sustainability Tracking Assessment Rating System. It's the metric system for sustainability in higher education. And it was in part created based on GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, as several of us on our campuses had used that as a metric system. And we ended up developing STARS to be that system, but for higher education, make it relevant.
We already use it. We're doing 2.0 now.
Perfect. So,
I'm starting
yeah,
to
so,
assess
okay,
that.
so I'm preaching to the choir here. So in 2.0, we, being ASHE, have also sort of, again, avoided talking about the definition of sustainability in the curriculum because it is so, it's tricky because if you're in the College of Design, Construction, and Planning, you think sustainability is one thing. If you're in the Department of Anthropology, it's something very different. If you're in chemistry, it's something very different. So we have created some baseline definitions on our campus that were created by a transdisciplinary group of faculty. We had to, at the beginning, define what the consensus model would be for agreeing on that definition, and it ended up being consensus -2, because it's faculty, you have to create a very specific process. And so that's what we use. I go through for STARS, I get a report from the registrar, and I comb through every single one of the classes to find any that might pop out as a faculty member who's teaching something that has sustainability learning outcomes embedded in it, but that particular faculty member is not somebody who's in our orbit. So that's a time-consuming process for me. We also then invite the department chairs to ask their faculty to self-identify courses that meet those definitions. I think you guys do a curriculum project on your, no?
Well, I just want to contrast that with NC State University. We have had a terrible time defining sustainability in the curriculum. That is not something that we have been able to achieve consensus on at this point. So this is great. I'm taking notes on
Well,
what
I'm not going to pretend it's easy. We also do an annual curriculum workshop, and we invite faculty to come and participate in a broad level exercise of what it would look like for them to take an existing course and embed sustainability learning outcomes in it, or to create a new sustainability focused class. They get a stipend at the front for participating in the workshop. They get a stipend when they turn into us their amended syllabus. And we post all those syllabi on our website so that other faculty can see them, and they highlight those things that they changed. It could be adding a reading. It could be completely rehabilitating an entire course.
There's an incentive for that.
There's an incentive for that. And I got some money from the Provost Fund for Academic Excellence to pilot it, and then I got the money in my recurring budget to support that. And now that we're doing that, faculty are like, oh, here's my class. Look, can you put it on your list? This is cool. So they're starting to see that there's some incentive for doing that. And like I said, it's different from class to class. And so in an anthropology class, looking at sort of human history and, how we, like medical anthropology is a great example of this professor who went through and looked at sort of the history of medicinal plants and, people's use with them and religious ties to them. And just some really interesting stuff that the students really enjoy that class, and the students tend to enjoy those classes. I have 3 math faculty who are all teaching different math classes. All their problem sets are sustainability related. I have another math faculty person who just gave a lecture for us on the climate change equation that he has developed. And so it happens in all different realms of education. It has to happen in all different realms of education. And it can happen in different ways. It doesn't have to look the same in every instance, which is, I think, why it's that like wiggly, squishy thing that ASHE can't quite get its hands on, a definition. And I frankly I wish that we didn't have to have everything so defined